This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 222, entitled Why Masculists Push for Female Masculism. Description. This flyer explains why Masculists consider it so important to push women to become female Masculists. The main reason is that with women taking the Masculist side, then a majority of voters can push the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws. With millions of female Masculists, the passive, apolitical, wimpy MGTOWs can become angry, politically active Masculists. The power of the feminazis will be reduced. Women will be nicer to be with, and populations will then not die out. Flyer itself, centered. Why Masculists push for female masculism. There are many strong reasons why Masculists push women to become female Masculists. This flyer talks about some of the major ones. It will list these reasons in bulleted form, then elaborate on them later. 1. Stepping stone to menfairing the gender laws. 2. Weakening the power of the feminazis. 3. Making women nicer to be with. 4. Stopping whole populations from dying out. 1. It's rather a long section. Stepping stone to menfairing the gender laws. Probably the most important reason is that by converting many women to female masculism, the Masculists can kill several birds with one stone. A. They can increase the size of the male bloc vote by adding to it the bloc vote of the female Masculists. B. When the combined male bloc vote plus the female Masculist bloc vote goes well over the 50% mark, the apolitical, wimpy MGTOWs, men going their own way, who are currently the largest group of men's livers, will see that becoming politically active for men's issues will not be a waste of time and effort, because they will see that with female Masculist allies, men now have a real opportunity to twist the arm of the gender politicians. C. The gender politicians will see which way the gender wind is blowing and learn from opinion polls that the male bloc vote plus a third of women voting in favour of female masculism, then they had better menfair the gender laws, otherwise they'll be voted out of power. You're probably wondering, how can Masculists persuade large numbers of women to become female Masculists? How could men persuade women to abandon their loyalty to their own sex and choose the side of the Masculists, that is, the side of men? The answer is by threatening women with babylessness. Since the top priority of women in their lives is to reproduce, they will do anything to forward that goal. And if men have the means to prevent that goal being fulfilled, then women will be forced to listen to what the Masculists have to offer them. One of the fundamental ideas of the Masculists, one that is so important that you could label it the core, that is Masculist, idea, the core idea. And that is that, quote, men have the financial power to force women to FIP up, that is, become FIPs, financially independent persons, by bothering to get a career-competent education at high school and college so that they do not become fluffies, that is, traditional women, who expect to be able to parasite off the money of a man as adults, so that they can pull their financial weight and not become a fluffy parasite, so hated and ignored by the Masculists. The fluffy feminist hypocrites took over the divorce courts in the 70s as part of the second wave of feminism, making divorce so toxic for men, for example, losing his kids with 90% probability losing his house and half his possessions, paying child support to kids he barely sees, and often alimony to his fluffy ex-wife, so that she continues to parasite off him after the divorce as she did before the divorce. That marriage became toxic for men, resulting in the fact that in today's world, in a string of major Western countries, 2/3 of young men under 35 refuse to marry, reject paternity, and spend their money on themselves. Unfortunately for men, about 3/4 of young women at age 16 choose to become fluffies as adults by becoming fluffy crappers at 16 by choosing to study the soft option. That is, the intellectually easy, intellectually lazy, memory-based majors like languages, history, English literature, etc., and not the analytical majors like math and the sciences. Then at university and college, these fluffy crappers are excluded from studying STEM, science, tech, engineering, math, and the professions, because they did not have the high school prerequisites of the analytic subjects needed. These fluffy crappers then sex some 40 different guys, that is, have 40 different penises in them by the time they're in their 30s, when their biological clocks start ticking hard, and they realise with their fluffy crap education that gives them a poor salary that they will need to find some gullible, ignorant man-slave to sexploit, to have him pay for the middle-class house that she wants to raise her kids in. 10 years later, she will be bored with Penis 41 and drag him through the fluffy feminist hypocrite-dominated divorce court system and financially crucify him, taking his house, his kids and his money so she can continue to sit on her fat parasitic ass and raise her kids in his house. The Masculists have such a hatred of fluffies that one of their primary political goals is to wipe them out. The number one political goal of the Masculists is to wipe out man-slavery, that is, men working for women, worldwide, this century, by wiping out the fluffies, not by killing them, but simply ignoring them to extinction, not even pumping and dumping them, simply giving them zero attention. Men have the financial power to do this, because nearly all men are fips. Men don't need to parasite off a woman's money to survive financially. Those billions of fluffies who hope to be able to parasite off the labour of a man will be forced to grow up, to take financial responsibility for their own life, or rot on the shelf, poor, manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, and spat at by men. Since women want a baby more than anything else, they will do whatever is necessary for them to have one when they get their baby rabies in their 30s. But as nearly all men within a decade will be influenced by Masculist and MGTOW ideas, there won't be any quality men left to give them their sperm. So these women will remain babyless and hence panic. Even if these women become female Masculists, in the sense of becoming individually nice to men, not dumping on them feminazi style, and being fips themselves, that will not be sufficient for men to be willing to give them their sperm and help pay for the costs of child raising. The reason why men will continue to refuse to give women their sperm is due to the toxicity of the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts and the profound misandry of the gender laws. The Masculists are telling women that the only way that men will be prepared to give them their sperm again is if the gender laws are made menfair, and that is not going to happen with the current 51% of the vote being female and with a higher proportion of women who vote than is the case with men. So, the gender politicians will observe the opinion polls and see that the female bloc vote is the majority. So they will give women what they want, that is, at the expense of men. As a result, the men continue to go MGTOW, men going their own way, refusing to marry, refusing to have kids, and spending their money on themselves. The Masculists then use this MGTOW strategy as a tool to punish women for having voted in gender laws that are so profoundly misandrist and men unfair. MGTOWs and Masculists punish women by rejecting them, forcing them to be babyless, rejecting marriage as decidedly disadvantageous to men, so men opt out. Women can go fuck themselves, because many MGTOWs don't even pump and dump women. They are so fed up with the arrogance and obnoxiousness of feminazis. So Masculists tell women that to force the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws, women need to become female masculists and put political pressure on the gender politicians to menfair the gender laws. Otherwise, they'll be voted out of power by the majority combined block vote of men plus masculist women. So Masculists need to educate women to become female masculists and vote out the misandrist gender laws. As millions of MGTOWs see that women are becoming female masculists and are voting out misandrist gender laws, they will give up their political apathy and convert themselves into angry masculists and start fighting for the menfairing of the gender laws and of society in general. These formerly apolitical, passive, wimpy MGTOWs will become angry masculists and will get politically active, setting up masculist groups in the high schools and universities, contacting the media to spread masculist and MGTOW ideas to the public via the broadcast media, writing masculist books and setting up men's studies courses at universities so that not only men but women too can be educated into masculist and MGTOW ideas. They will lobby the gender politicians, telling them that indirectly the gender politicians are genociders, because their men-unfair gender laws have caused men to reject paternity, which is wiping out whole populations. So the gender politicians have to menfair the gender laws, or eventually they'll be assassinated. People will take the law into their own hands if they become convinced that the gender laws are causing the population to be wiped out. So, by causing women to become female masculists, these two major events will occur. That is, A, the MGTOWs are converted into angry, politically active masculists, and B, the gender politicians are forced to menfair the gender laws or be voted out of power due to the combined force of the block male vote plus the block female masculist vote. That together will be well over 50% and hence decisive. 2. Weakening the power of the feminazis. To Masculists, fluffy feminists are hypocrites and are harshly criticised for that fact. They are seen as hypocrites because on the one hand they want equal rights for women but reject equal obligations for women, namely sharing the burden of earning the living by bothering to get a career-competent education, by fipping up at high school, choosing to study career-competent majors. Feminism is like a religion in many ways for women. It preaches to women that women are the equal of men, that women can do anything, and that even, in many respects, women are superior to men. Of course, masculist scientists lampoon this piece of feminazi is-cyanate arrogance by ramming home to women that women are the inferior sex, being dumber than men on average by 4 IQ points, that men have a higher IQ variance by 10%, so that the morons and genii are males, so that men win 99% of the Science Nobel Prizes, that men have higher testosterone levels than women, so are more aggressive, ambitious, dogged, persistent, and achieve far more than women, who are more wishy-washy and give up difficult tasks more easily. Masculists attack arrogant feminazis with the above facts and smash their delusions. It would be nice for men and for masculists not to have to do this, so as more women become female masculists, they will learn to be more realistic, more humble, and simply accept male superiority because of its scientific validity. Male superiority cannot be contested by anyone who is informed. Those feminazis who deny this are merely dismissed with contempt for their is-cyanate fairydom. Is-cyanacy is ignorance of science, unable to reason scientifically. Fairydom is living in a fairyland, believing what you want to believe, just like religionists. 3. Making women nicer to be with. With large numbers of women being female masculists, and the gender laws made men fair, then the two sexes will get on a lot better than they do today. Men increasingly find women today a pain in the ass and just not worth bothering with, not even worth pumping and dumping in many cases. Feminazi propaganda tells women that men are the enemy, that men are responsible for all women's problems, which makes gullible, simple-minded feminazis hostile to men, and hence makes them repulsive to men, who then choose not to go near them. Misandrous male-dumping feminazi bitches are the first category of female to be rejected by men. Men hate such women and totally ignore them. By having a large proportion of women informed of masculist and MGTOW ideas, these women will see both sides of the gender story and hence be more reasonable and nicer to be with. 4. Stopping whole populations from dying out. With the gender laws men fared, with nearly all women forced by men to be FIPs, with the that's paternity rejection right, brought in as part of the systematic, across-the-board men-fairing of the gender laws by the gender politicians, who will be scared shitless of the combined masculist and female masculist bloc votes, will be motivated to comprehensively and once and for all make the gender laws fair to both sexes and not favouring only women. In many countries, the birth rate is now so low that whole populations are dying out. For example, in Japan, Germany, Italy, Spain, etc., the birth rate is about 1.3 children per woman, compared to the replacement rate of 2.1. This cannot continue, otherwise the feminazis and the gender politicians will be seen increasingly as genociders and will eventually be murdered as the population crash problem becomes top priority. With men a lot more willing to be fathers, with women much nicer to men and well informed of men's issues and problems, and having lost their insufferable and irrational feminazi arrogance, relations between the sexes will improve a lot. The babies will come, and the population will not die out. There are other reasons why masculists really push for women to become female masculists, but the above 4 are the main ones. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channels de GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers, and Hugo de GARIS. Ciao.